I'm going to start off by discussing what I see as the three shaping influences on my design and my sensibility, and then I'll move into how they sort of translated into my work. So I don't think we can begin without looking at Polly Jessup because I think it's important to mention her work. You can see here, this is a dining room from the 1950s, and it feels so fresh today. You could imagine this being current today as it would have in the 1950s, and I so wish I could sort of crawl into this image and study the way these sculptures are displayed on the wall. And as I studied her work a bit preparing for tonight, I couldn't help but notice that her style and my grandmother's eye, which was one of my greatest shaping influences, I would be very shocked if my grandmother didn't know her or have worked with her. And we'll look at a few of her images in a minute. But I also was drawn to her work because, like me, she has ties to Michigan. And some of her best work you can see at the Ford Estate in Grosse Pointe. And again, it looks sort of as current today as it would have in the 1950s. So from an early age, I would say that the guiding and most shaping influence of my aesthetic eye would be my grandmother. From an early age, I noticed that she was a voracious collector of everything. If something was beautiful, she needed it, she wanted it, she had to have it, and she bought it. To people who knew and loved her, she was known as Dearie, and it just sort of fit because it was unique as she was. And she would always say, the worst thing you can be is boring in life. And that your home should reflect who you are and where you've been. And it wouldn't be uncommon for you to be sitting on the sofa that you see in this picture and discover that she had pinned a brooch or a frog or something just for you to discover as someone in her home. And she entertained in the same way. She lavished in the small details. And if you looked at all these things separately, you wouldn't see how they could fit together, but they did. And she trusted her eye, and I think my work kind of resembles this in a way because I was fortunate enough to inherit or purchase a lot of the things from her. And when we had very little, my husband and I would spend our money on the renovation and buy stuff from West Elm, and we'd throw her stuff in the apartment, and it would look rich. So, even as a young designer, I became really interested in how you can form a collection with little or great amount of wealth. And I think it's one of my favorite things when a client comes with a collection because it's just the greatest starting off point. Their sensibility, their point of view will always be represented in the interior, and it will not look catalog or like an instant room or like it was created in a day. So we feel very fortunate when clients come with things from the past. And this was my grandfather's library. And I don't know, many people may not realize that my grandmother was really an academic at heart. She read voraciously and collected everything from clothes, earrings, jewelry, fashion. She just, and this is a collection that she truly built kind of on her own. She did not have anyone guiding her or telling her what to buy, or an art advisor saying you should do this or you do that. This was all based on her instinct and what she loved. And she just would see a hole in her room and she would need to fill it. And she would wait until she found the perfect thing. So here you can see, these are very traditional shaped pieces of furniture, but you have the Thiebaud here, the modern art. You have this Friedenberg hand chair, which is wild. And then, everything else is sort of traditional and very English. So I found her in a way like she knew the room needed to be formal, but she had a sense of humor about it. And she did this throughout her homes and interiors. And sort of the fun thing about the rooms I'll show you is you can kind of trace some of the pieces I'll show you as they move from her home into my family members and my own home. This was the sort of entryway of her home on North Lake Way. And you'll see, she had these Rodin sculptures, but then this 17th century British painting and a roll-arm sofa. I think if you had looked at all these things separately, you wouldn't necessarily think they went together. And I remember this corner of her living room quite well because on the other side of the room, she kept an antique collection of children's books. And when we would get bored at dinner parties, I just found myself leafing through them. And I loved them. And throughout her life and my life, and as I knew her, she would send me books. And this collection is probably my husband and I, one of our most cherished collection of things. I have no idea if they hold any value, but to me, they're everything because every time you open them, it's a new experience and I learned something new. And this sculpture, you'll see in my mother's home later on. So with my grandmother is one of the influences on my career and sort of teaching me about collecting. I really do have to mention my time spent at Cranbrook, Kingswood in Michigan. My mother actually moved us there so we could attend the same school as her. And it's stated about the school that it's probably the most designed environment you'll encounter in the United States. So as a young child, we would have history of Cranbrook classes, and we'd walk around once a week and learn about all of this. And I don't think I realized at the time, but there's no way you can learn that you can't appreciate design and what's around you if these are your classrooms, if these are the halls that you walk through every day. And every bit of the rooms were designed down to the textiles, the chairs we sat in. So Cranbrook's sort of an unusual place. It was founded in 1904, and it features works of world-renowned architects such as Saarinen, Albert Kahn, Stephen Hall, Todd Williams, Billy Seen, Ralphio Mineo, Peter Rose, and sculptor Carl Mills and Marshall Fredericks, among others. It's really an enchanted place, and I feel really fortunate to have attended school there. I also was able to take weaving classes, which I have to think influenced my love of textiles later on. So if you can imagine as a young child, like this was my dining room on the right, where we would eat at lunch every day. It's pretty remarkable, you know. And those were the chairs we sat in, and if we ruined them, we had to refurbish them. So it wasn't lost on us that this was an important place to be and a real privilege. But at the time, I didn't know really where all this was headed. So I went off to college and studied art history. And in my final year at Trinity, I was working at the Met, and actually my husband's mother helped me get the job. It was before we were dating. And I think that's when she decided she liked me, but maybe I'm just telling myself that. And I had the great opportunity to work in the drawings and prints department. My job was mundane. At the time, they were converting onto an online system. And so my job was to take all of the card catalogs and type every bit of information into a form. And let me tell you, the Met's collection is vast. And at the end of the day, one day, I pulled out a stack, and it was probably like this thick of cards. And instead of starting this task, I decided to pull the object, which would change my life because this sketchbook that I pulled had been in the collection since 1906 and hadn't been touched since that time. And I was looking for a thesis topic, and it fell directly in my lap. And I spent the next 5 or 6 years of my life working to get this thing published, and it really changed the discourse on his work because it proved that he had in fact traveled to Italy, and that this time that he was in Italy as a young man influenced the poses and figures at which he used in his future portraits. So top left, you have Michelangelo's Grand Duke Lorenzo. Below that, you have his sketch from his Italian sketchbook. This is Michelangelo. This is Sir Joshua Reynolds. Oh, I didn't talk. Oh, sorry. This is all about Reynolds. So back up. I'll give you a little info on him too. But so Reynolds was, he was the founder of the Royal Academy in England, and he wrote the discourses on art. He was really the man who was responsible for bringing back the Renaissance perspective, the Renaissance practice, and the Renaissance sensibility of art from Italy to England. And he founded the Royal Academy, and he wrote these discourses on art, and he said such things as, there can be no doubt that he who has the materials has the greatest means of invention. He also would talk extensively about how you have to collect and you have to use what's in the past and reinvent it as your own. It's okay to copy, it's okay to borrow, but then you have to add your own touch. So he says nothing comes from nothing. Invention, strictly speaking, is little more than a new combination of those images which have been previously gathered and deposited in the memory. And I think that my work, it's like nothing's new anymore, right? But it's all about how you put it together. So we could all be given the same things and find a different route. And I have been forever influenced by him. He really was a symbol of the Grand Tour, which was a period in English aristocracy where people would travel through mainland Europe and collect things and bring them back to their homes and show them to their friends. And that stuck with me as a guiding principle throughout my design practice, and I really saw a lot of it in my grandmother's as well. After graduate school, I ended up getting my master's in fine art, and I decided I needed a break from academia. And I decided I'd try the family business, which was real estate development. And I purchased this building, I think because I felt it was a collectible object. Every time I went to it, the facade was changing. And that fascinated me. I mean, I couldn't understand how people were allowed to do this. And then I started Googling these artists, and I realized that their art was selling for a lot of money, and they were actually really well known, and that they were definitely going to come back when I cleaned it off and keep doing it. So what we decided to do was invite 60 artists from around the world to live in the building for 6 weeks and cover every wall and surface of the space. It was really incredible because I didn't expect the reaction to it. 10,000 people showed up and waited 6 hours in December, cold, to get in. And I sort of think it was at a point in the street artist movement that they hadn't been allowed to do something like this yet. And since I wasn't a traditional developer, I wasn't trying to market this. And I think that made them trust me. And we collaborated on a book for the 10-year anniversary, which you see a page from here. And then this was after the renovation. And they didn't come back. They did not come back. So this was when I went to market with this building in 08, 09, when the economy crashed. And I realized after doing this process and restoring this building that I loved doing this, but I wanted to do it with other people's money, not my own. So, I knew that next for me was design. I had experience with a year at architecture school, and I set out with a friend, and I don't know why, but people started hiring us. So it was a period of time, and my partner at the time was Georgia Tappert, and we had connections here as well, and we built a furniture line and fabric line, and we both ended up moving out of state. And I miss working with her, though. It was a lot of fun. So I can't, as I start to look at my work now, so if we look back, it was my grandmother, Cranbrook, and Reynolds were really shaping influences, and I didn't really know how those things would come together. And as I was pulling this together, it's really interesting to see at the time, as a 20-year-old or young 30s, you may not see where it's all leading, but it all kind of came together for me when my mother and I opened the Grand Tour. And I think that this time in our lives was immediately following the passing of my grandmother, and I see it really as a love note to her. We traveled the world, my mom and I, and whenever we saw something, we sort of asked, what would Deary do? And we used that as our guide. And it was a moment in time, and COVID got in our way, but I'm really grateful because it exposed me to a community of people I probably wouldn't have met. And what I loved about the store and the souk was it brought people together. So since the business was heavily relying on events in that community, it was really hard to run in the pandemic. But all good things come to an end, and I'm so grateful for that opportunity. And I can't help but think, as I found this is in the Cranbrook archives, and I didn't copy that, but when we look to do our installation of furniture, it's very similar. And as I look at my current work, I really have to thank two people here, Christina and Kate, because everything I do, I couldn't do without my team, and I mean that fully. They make me look good every day, so I'm really grateful to them. Now I'll look at, this was my first apartment that my husband and I did in New York City. And everything that wasn't for my grandmother was really cheap. And so this is a really good example of how, we had this West Elm rug. And I made these chairs, but the Friedenberg was from her, the sculpture in the fireplace, the crystal obelisks, the mirrors. My parents got me this beautiful Michael Eastman photograph because that's where I got the inspiration for the walls. But overall, it was a collection, and we just had to kind of see where things fit and worked, and then we filled the holes. And we actually did travel to Paris and kicked around in the flea market and spent a couple $1,000s. But it was this is the first time Nick and I created something together, and you see so much of my grandmother here as well. So this is probably my favorite room I've ever done, because this room was my grandmother's bedroom, and as she got older, she operated fully out of this room. If you came over for dinner, you were in the room with her, and she was in bed with a tray, and she would have 5 or 6 people with trays. Just who wouldn't be expecting that? But she held board meetings in there. She, smoked a lot of cigarettes in there. When I got pregnant, I think she decided to redo this room because she just couldn't handle not being near the future grandchild. So she would make me come down once a month to talk about this room with her. And it was really, I think, to convince me to move here, which worked after all. But I remember when I told the rug maker that we wanted to make this rug wall to wall, they thought I was nuts. I mean, absolutely nuts. So they had to build a loom, and she didn't want a seam. I mean, she knew what she was doing. So this rug took, 12, 14 months, and she did get to experience it, and it didn't show a thing. It was actually perfect. But you can see her collected sensibility here in this room. She's surrounded by the things she loves. And then this was her view from bed. So she knew after the room was done that she needed something special there, and that's what she went with. And I just love that juxtaposition between this traditional kind of ornate bedroom and then this really contemporary piece of artwork. So now looking at some of the more current work, you'll see my grandmother's collection has translated here with these sconces, which were over her bed here. And this was her dining table from her North Lake Way home. And the torchairs were also in her bedroom. So in this room, which was my mother's house, I'm showing just family work tonight, but we were able to use these things from her and reimagine them. I mean, this Johnson table is flanked by chairs from anthropology. So you can really see the mix coming in and sort of, you can't be a snob about things. If it looks good, and don't overthink it. And you see some of her sculptures reappearing throughout our homes now. This is the living room, and that painting I actually love. It's by a Cranbrook artist. I couldn't convince my parents to buy it, but it's a Beverly Fishman from Gavlack Galleries, and we really enjoy working with her. So she loans us pieces from time to time to make the interiors really sing. This room, I think my mother and I were completely inspired by her, by my grandmother. It's sort of, we used her as our muse, and a lot of this furniture, the chair was reupholstered from her living room. The bedside table was hers as well. And these things have special, special meaning to us, and we try and keep them with us. And then this is the kitchen. I just want to show you. It's like, goes very modern and very traditional back and forth, but when you're there, it seems to work. And I love working with my family because a lot of times they let me take risks others wouldn't. This is my dad's study from this home. And this is the bedroom they built for my children who no longer wanted to sleep at their own house. So they don't have anything like this at home, but it was really fun to build. And they used this room. I mean, they had a lot of fun in it. And I think, kids living in well-designed spaces is important as well, because I think as they get older, it teaches them to care about their home, where they live. And I always, as my mother did with me, I always try and include my children on the design of their rooms, because I think it makes them feel more attached to it. It's a safer space for them, but also they appreciate it more. This was a room I did for the Kips Bay Show House directly after my grandmother passed away. And a lot of the things in here were from her, except this one piece here, which was from Georgia, my furniture line from 10 years prior. We couldn't sell them at all, but at the show house, everyone wanted to buy it. So, and then I didn't want to sell them anymore, which maybe was my problem being a shopkeep. But, it folds over and it turns into an end table. And it was inspired by a piece that Aaron Burr, I can't remember the reference. It was one of the presidents used as a writing desk. And the backgammon table was from her home, all the books, the little Magritte in the corner. The giraffe is my brother's, but I borrowed it. Another important person, I would say, in my working relationship is my Aunt Margie, because she's an Egyptologist and a true academic, and I really find it interesting working with her, because she brings this amazing collection of antiquities with her, which really work in more modern spaces quite well. And this was from her previous home, and now we're working on a new home with her. But we went on the grand tour for this home as well. We shopped all over the world. It was so much fun. She had the bad idea of bringing my daughter with us on one of the trips when she was 3 years old and couldn't get on the time zone. So I do not recommend that. But so this is two of the rooms from her house on East Inlet. And you can see throughout her interiors, she places these Chinese porcelains and other little antiquities sort of throughout. And then, the next shelf's a Jeff Koons dog. So this sort of mixed, eclectic look is really, I think, what we like to be known for. And it doesn't get you too stuck in any one style. And the last home I'm going to show you here, this is my husband and I's recent home. And when I had this store, we sort of saw it as maybe a showroom space where we could use the overflow furniture, but it ended up just really kind of becoming almost like a gallery-like space. It was the first time that we could have all of the things we loved in one space. And it was a 1950s home on the north end that was one of those really ugly ranch houses with the pop-up above the garage. And we decided, and it was a courtyard pool type of home, and the only way to take it was really modern. And as we renovated it, we found terrazzo was actually there instead of poured concrete as the floor. And although we couldn't salvage that terrazzo, unfortunately, we sort of tried to stay true to the nature of the house in that way and really clean it up. And then we had fun with color. So, I really think one of the lasting impressions from my grandmother was like, don't take yourself too seriously, and it's okay to take risks. And we didn't know if this would work. I don't know how many Photoshops we did to see, and the guy who built it thought we were nuts to do it this bright, but it really worked out. And I have to give a shout out here to Robert Ruffino, who is one of the great interiors editors and who so graciously styled this for me for a photo shoot. And he's in the room tonight and has been really one of my greatest mentors and helped me along the way. So thank you, Robert. So here you'll see some of these pieces. This Giacometti arrived from my grandmother in a UPS box for my 30th birthday. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did. But she loved to sort of do something absurd, and this, that's just one example. She'd also say things, she'd send us dishes and plates and silver and say, put them in the back hall. Like we had a back hall. we had a 2-bedroom apartment. There was no back hall. I don't know what she imagined it to look like, but she never got to see it, I don't think, in person. And then this will show you, like, my husband and I love to travel. Before COVID, we went to Morocco, and we came back with some really great lanterns and lights and rugs and things that you see here, along with my 25th birthday present, which was that hand chair. And here, the tree on the left, my mother actually got these from me as a gift from her estate. And she told some crazy stories about how she got these trees. So if you want to hear them, you can ask me, but they're not appropriate for a large group of people. She just loves something as crazy as this. It's like a brass palm tree with ostrich coconuts, amethyst. It was wild. And this was the type of thing she was really drawn to. And because of it, I can't part with it. Even if it doesn't look good in a room, I try and force it because I just love them so much. And you'll see the book collection, part of it that she gave me. She gave me these beautiful vellum wrap books. And also I have a series that are wrapped in Chinese tea paper, watercolored, that are just make every shelf look good. This is my son's bedroom. We start little collections for our children. My grandmother did as well. Here you'll see there's a cameo I had Doug Friedman do of her and my 2 children. Keith Haring, this was her dining table from her Franklin, Michigan house, paired with some Italian chairs we bought online at auction. There are my dogs. They go well with everything. And this is my daughter's bedroom. And those Marakamis were a gift to her. And I think it's really interesting that my parents did the same thing for me. They always gave me art. Because we were privileged, I didn't really need anything, and I would ask for art, starting, I don't know, probably around 10 instead of things for my birthday. And I'm glad I did. And I think even if it's not expensive, these weren't terribly expensive or anything, but just when I moved into my first apartment, I had a few things to hang on my wall, and that meant a lot to me, and it reminded me of my family. And then, value aside, it's nice. It's a nice gift to leave someone. And the last image I'm showing you here, you'll see this was our bedroom. The stool was from my grandfather's dressing room on the right in our bathroom, and the rug we found in Morocco, but in the bed was from her bedroom in Franklin Hills. And I purchased this from auction because the estimate at the estate was too high and I got a great deal on it. So I was really happy about that. And the little chair on the left, which just keeps being reused and loved and recovered, was also from their dressing room in Franklin. So it's all these things from her put back together in my home. And that's really it.